Please subscribe to our channel, Pacific Front Untold, and be sure to leave a comment after watching a video. The Taiwanese experience during World War II was one of many different perspectives and heavily influenced by the political and military affairs of the first half of the 20th century, specifically those in China and Japan. Since they had been under Japanese occupation for nearly 4 decades when the Second Sino-Japanese War began, this influenced many Taiwanese to be more supportive of the Japanese cause in Southeast Asia. However, there were many Taiwanese who supported the Chinese nationalist position against Japan. Many fled to China to escape the Japanese invasion, and these displayed a heavy anti-Japanese sentiment during the war. To better understand these different perspectives, the book, Taiwan, Israel of the East, explores the effects and changes that the Second World War had on the Taiwanese socially and politically. Through historical articles that examine the Taiwanese experience in China and Japan during the war, paired with the personal story of a Taiwanese who lived in Taiwan under Japanese occupation, the book helps uncover why one group of people would take completely opposing sides during the war. In China, the Taiwanese community and political organizations sought to unite under a centralized front known as the Alliance of Taiwanese Revolutionary Organizations. The primary organizations within this alliance were the Taiwanese Revolutionary League, Taiwan Volunteers, and Taiwan Party Headquarters. Their goal was to help the Chinese combat Japan as well as to influence the Nationalist Government on how to assist Taiwan and correctly govern it after the Chinese liberated it from Japanese control. The alliance was not only a political movement, but also a military and intelligence organization that employed its own espionage and guerrilla tactics against the Japanese, in addition to spreading propaganda to support their cause. The Taiwanese Revolutionary League focused on intelligence gathering, guerrilla actions, propaganda, and political activities. The League was valuable in gathering information because many of their members could read, write, and speak in Japanese. While its guerrilla tactics were limited, the League also focused on education and propaganda for the Taiwanese community in China, as well as those in Taiwan, to encourage their support. The League also tried to convince the Taiwanese community and foreigners that Taiwan was legally a province of China. The League's most important tasks were to work with the Chinese Nationalist Government on the direction of the war effort and educating officials on how to rule Taiwan by treating Taiwanese as Chinese citizens instead of Japanese subjects. The Taiwan Volunteers was primarily a military organization that recruited young men for military service. The members underwent strenuous military training and formed militia units, which became part of the Nationalists' Children Corps. The Taiwanese Volunteers also had a political wing that focused on learning and understanding Japanese for intelligence gathering and spreading propaganda to not only Taiwanese, but to discourage the Japanese from fighting. Lastly, the Taiwanese Volunteers consisted of a medical group that not only treated combat injuries, but also sickness, particularly diseases such as cholera. They opened several military and medical hospitals that assisted both Taiwanese and Chinese patients. The largest Taiwanese political military organization in China was the Taiwanese Party Headquarters. Of the 3 main Taiwanese organizations, the Taiwanese Party Headquarters was the most effective politically and militarily, since they were able to recruit the most members and take part in most of the Taiwanese military actions during the war. The party was able to recruit Taiwanese within the Japanese military to act as spies or double agents, enabling them to gain much of their intelligence from the inside. Politically, the party headquarters worked very closely with the Chinese Nationalist Government and even had one of their members as a delegate within the Nationalist Government. Their main political goal was to assist the Nationalist Government with handling post-war Taiwan and how to best assimilate and integrate Taiwan into China. After nearly a half-century under Japanese occupation, Taiwanese culture and values were heavily influenced and directed by Japan through Taiwan's education system, One example of this is demonstrated by the education of Kay Hickman, Ni Chen. Kay lived on the main Penghu Island during the Japanese occupation. During World War II, Kay was in the first grade and was taught by Japanese teachers. Within her family, Kay learned and spoke Taiwanese and Mandarin. In school, she was taught Japanese and spoke Taiwanese and Japanese. The Japanese had such an influence on her family that her brothers and father not only joined different branches of the Japanese military, but one of her brothers felt more Japanese than Chinese, and he discriminated against Chinese, calling them Chongoro, or Chinaman. They also changed their name to a Japanese one, Undo. Kay's full Japanese name was Undo Keiko. When the Chinese once again claimed Taiwan, Kay and her family had to change their last name back to a Chinese one, Chen. The Taiwanese hatred towards Chinese and Americans not only stemmed from their Japanese-influenced education, but also from the constant aerial attacks on Taiwan by American air power to cripple Japanese industrial production. Kay lived in the city of Megong, which was frequently targeted by American bombers. The fear created by these bombings was felt by her and her family, and was a very common experience among many Taiwanese who suffered under these attacks. This led to a hatred of Americans for the devastation they inflicted on Taiwan towards the end of the Second World War. Kay and her family's story is just one facet of the Taiwanese experience during World War II, but through it, we begin to better understand the challenges, trials, and triumphs of the Taiwanese people during this tumultuous period in history. Learn more about it by checking out the book, Taiwan, the Israel of the East, available now on Amazon in audiobook, paperback, and ebook formats.